It's all about the process, step by step. Today, you can start successfully in your business by using a proven process that works. Welcome to the Start Successfully podcast, where veteran entrepreneur Gabe Arnold shares his proven step-by-step process, the process you need to start successfully in any business. And now, here's your host, Gabe Arnold.
All right, welcome to episode 4 of the Start Successfully podcast. I am really excited to have you here with me today, listening in. Appreciate your time and just investing it with me. I really value that and appreciate that. Today, I'm really excited. I have a good friend of mine and partner named Jeremiah Boehner on the show with us. And Jeremiah is a seasoned sales professional who has taught my team and I a lot over the years, and even more recently quite a bit about sales, improving your sales process, improving your closes, how to build value and do test closes. I mean, just there's so many different things that he's shared with us. So right after our break, I'm going to share with you one of my favorite sales quotes, and then we'll get on the line here with Jeremiah, and we'll dive right into it.
This episode is brought to you by Copywriter Today. With Copywriter Today, you get a team of dedicated writers working for you on your content marketing needs. Get your email marketing, blog posting, white paper, sales copy, lead magnets, and so much more, written by professional writers that really understand how to drive your business. Copywriter Today is a one-stop solution, a subscription-based service with a low monthly cost. To get started now with a special offer just for you, visit copywritertoday.com/start successfully. That's copywritertoday.com/start successfully.
So the quote that I wanted to share with everybody today before we get here with Jeremiah is from Zig Ziglar. Definitely a great name in the sales world. A little bit older, passed away a few years ago, but I remember years ago when I first started out in sales, one of my early companies, listening to him, and he's definitely was really inspirational and always on fire. And so his quote says, "You don't have to be great to start, but you have to start to be great." And for me, that just really reminds me of how, taking action, taking the first step is really the first key to being successful, to starting successfully. So even if you struggle at sales, even if you're not sure if you're any good at it, even if you don't know the skills or have any experience in it, you have to start. So I want to encourage you to start. That's part of starting successfully, is starting. And I also want to make sure that you just listen in, because Jeremiah is going to share with us some great resources, tips, and tools and things that he's shared with me over the years, and I'm sure you'll find it beneficial. So we'll get him on the line now. All right. Well, today I am really excited to have a good friend of mine, Jeremiah Boehner, on with me. He is an excellent sales professional and coach. Just the other day, I had the great opportunity to have him come on and help with our new product that I talked about a couple episodes ago, your resume builder. And he's just intuitively just really good in sales, but beyond that, which is much more important, he has he has the discipline and the approach and the right strategies that work. And in my experience, sales is one of the things that I see so many different entrepreneurs struggle with. Even if they have a great product or they have everything else nailed down, sales can be a real struggle. And so I want to have Jeremiah on with us today so that all of us can learn a little bit more about sales and everything on that front. So thanks for being with us, Jeremiah.
Thanks for having me, Gabe.
Awesome. So let's dive right in. And I think there's probably some of this I probably even haven't heard myself yet. We've been working together for a few years now. But tell me a little bit more about kind of like yourself and your career and how you ended up working in sales, kind of how that all came together.
Yeah. So I've always been pretty good at sales. My first sales job when I was 15, I was selling Christmas trees at a Christmas tree lot. And I mean, even before that, going door to door and selling candy bars and stuff like that for the Boy Scouts and other school related fundraisers, convincing people to buy what I was trying to sell has always been a skill of mine. And after working in retail for a long time, after I graduated from college, I was looking for a role, and I got a role at this startup that did internet advertising. And they initially didn't hire me for sales. They hired me to do some outreach and some other stuff. But that position wasn't really a fit for the company. And because I had a sales background, they moved me over there, and I immediately started, bringing in the deals. And during that process, I became the sales director. My boss at that company had left for another opportunity, and they were like, well, we want you to be in charge. I had never run a corporate sales team before. I had managed people before and managed like retail sales, but not anything on this level where we're doing, $1 million deals and trying to grow a decent company. And, so over the past 5 years, I've figured it out and built what I think is a fairly successful sales team, and brought in millions of dollars in sales for my company, and been helping other entrepreneurs like yourself improve their sales process and increase their sales.
Nice. That's awesome. What, you sound like me. That's probably why we get along. I've been hustling, selling people since I was a little kid. But, and some of it came like really naturally to me. But was there like a point in time where either a big or small sale, because it's not always the dollar amount, it's like the actual kind of win of the sale. Was there a time where like you just really hit it out of the park and you realized, man, I'm really good at this and I should, continue to develop my skill in sales?
There's not a particular time where that happened. And I think just like anybody in any role, there's always a little bit of self-doubt, unless you're just one of those people that have absolute certainty, and I'm not one of those people.
Yeah.
So there are definitely the days where I have my doubts if I've just been incredibly lucky. But if I try not to listen to those, there's been a couple of occasions where I think I made the decision to be successful and then took action to get there. And the first time, I forget what was happening, but I was working this 2 jobs at the same time, and one of them was not going very well. And the other one was going okay, but I decided, but they treated me a lot better at the other job. Mm-hmm. So at that point, I decided that, all right, I'm going to quit the job that wasn't going very well and go all in on this one. And I'm not going to, and I'm going to choose to be successful, and I'm not going to get myself fired, just because I'd been fired before for poor performance or poor attitude. And so I didn't want that to happen again. So I made that was a very conscious decision. And then I started taking steps to try and figure out what I needed to do to be successful, including finding, coaches and trainings and things like that. And then the other time was we had just lost a large contract, and, things were pretty tight, and we were talking to my boss about what we were going to do. So one of the things I needed to go do was to go back and replace this customer, essentially. And I can't give out the numbers, but it was a significant amount of revenue
yeah,
that I needed to replace. So, or there was a potential that we were going to have to let a lot of people go.
Yeah.
So I went out, and I applied all the things that I had learned, which was, where are my most valuable customers and my lowest hanging fruit? Where can I get the most amount of money the quickest? And I went and found those customers, got them signed up within the week, and essentially replaced all that revenue that had been lost within a couple of weeks.
Yeah. I don't know, but it sounds like, that's pretty fast turnaround. A couple of weeks is always good. It sounds like what you described there is similar to how I've acted or reacted, or something that in sales I see a pattern of maybe, and maybe you have some insight into this, maybe you don't, but I always feel like that those big, like, critical time periods where you lose a huge account and you got to make it up, or you're going to be in trouble, or on the business side, or there's something personally going on where like you really need the money or you really need to make it happen. I've always seen that, like, sales, myself included, salespeople just perform better when there's a lot of pressure like that, or there's something big on the line. Do you think that's always the case, or is that just like, is that like how people in sales perform the best, or is that just kind of situational, or is that something that happens like when we're just, kind of young and immature in sales, or what are your thoughts about that? Because I've witnessed that behavior many times, and in myself included. I haven't really broken down why that is.
Yeah. So I have thought a lot about this, and from what I can tell, and from what researchers who study this beyond sales is, there's you need internal pressure in order to succeed and external pressure. So when those two things like line up, and you have the skill set to take appropriate action, that's when you hit that success. And I think that's what it was. Now, how I got replaced all that revenue was I went back to customers that had fallen off.
Gotcha.
Before this, customer churn was not a big deal to us. We didn't really think too much about it. But had we not had those customers in the past, it probably would have been a lot more difficult for me to have done what I did.
Yeah.
I still probably would have gotten a lot of customers because there was that external pressure of, like this is all going to come crashing down potentially.
Right.
And the internal motivation as well to succeed because I wanted to, make a lot of money on my commission, and they just happened to marry. And I think that's what happens with people when the internal pressures and the external pressures meet and force you forward. Yeah. Either that or you break and
right. It doesn't work. So like the external is obviously, if you lose a big account or you have a lot of pressure from, your boss, the company, your situation from a workplace standpoint, and those happen and then probably are fairly easy to, like, in some senses manufacture. You can put a lot of pressure on yourself or on a salesperson and create some pressure there. The internal side of it, do you think that that's something that you can, like, coach in yourself more, or is it just kind of refocusing on being money motivated? You kind of mentioned, like, obviously you're motivated by the big commissions that you get out of it. Is that something that do you feel like both those things are things that you can manipulate in a healthy way?
Yeah. So you can definitely manufacture both senses. Like, I don't have kids or a family, so there's not a lot of external pressure for me to succeed other than my own desire. Because if I fail, the only person I'm failing is myself. But if you have a family, then your kids and your wife or your husband or your partner, that can be a great external factor. And then if from a management perspective, if you know what your employees are motivated by, you can create that through bonuses, commissions, and other types of prizes. Now, money's not always going to be the main intrinsic motivator. Like, everybody wants it, but there's other things like, public recognition of their hard work, things like that. I've had employees who really wanted a more flexible work schedule. So once they started exceeding quota regularly, I let them work from home a couple days a week.
No.
And that, that didn't really work too well, but it motivated that employee to get there. And once they got it, we failed to figure out a way to keep them motivated.
Gotcha. But that's a good point and you're completely right. Some people, it's not about necessarily money or an amount of money, although obviously that's involved. We all need to make a living selling, but there's other stuff outside that's motivating or can be just as important or maybe more important in some cases. Yeah, definitely. In your experience, like, obviously you've coached a lot of different people. You've worked with our team and made a huge difference on the process that we take. And I know and obviously you have the teams that you've managed in the past as well. What do you think, like, is the biggest lie that, entrepreneurs or salespeople kind of tell themselves? And maybe that's connected with the mistakes they make, or, like, what's the mindset that you try to identify and correct for people?
Yeah, so a lot of entrepreneurs who aren't good at sales think that sales is a skill set that you're born with, that it's, some sort of, like, evil magic that some people have and some people don't, and that's, not necessarily the case. Like, you don't need to be gregarious and extroverted to be a good salesperson. Like, nobody who's listening to this knows me, but if you were to meet me at a party, unless I was in a really good mood, you would not think I was an extroverted person. I'm an introvert normally, but through my years of sales and sales training, I've learned to, turn on that part of me that I need to use to interact with people and to get the sale. And then when I'm not using it, I'm go back to my normal introverted self. And I think that's a big lie that a lot of entrepreneurs and other people tell themselves is about sales, is that they need to be a certain way to succeed at sales. And sales is just a set of skills that rely on human psychology and emotion that you can learn and master if you put in the time and effort.
Yeah, that's definitely a good point, and I can definitely identify with you on that too, because I'm definitely more on the introverted side of things, which obviously people that I work with and customers, and when I'm selling, you'd never know that, but you're completely right. It's a skill that you can develop, and it's obviously sometimes extroverted people can get into sales easier, but I don't necessarily think there's a direct correlation there. It's definitely just a skill set that you turn on, and use. So it's a good point. So obviously anybody can learn the skill and go through the process and, use the resources out there and work with you and kind of learn that side of it. But where do you see people making, like, what are the common mistakes that you see that everybody's making in sales? So I have my brand new product and I know that I need to sell it and pitch it and get it out there. What do you see just like really common, in startups or small business owners or even new salespeople that are just getting into a position and they're trying to start it, get started successfully in that position?
Yeah, so there are a couple common mistakes I see people making. Number one is they don't know who their target customer is, especially if they have a product that serves a lot of different industries. And that right there is going to waste a lot of time and effort. So when you're first starting out, identify who are your most valuable customers. If you're a new hire at a company, that's pretty easy because you can look at who your most valuable customers are and create profiles based around them. But if you're an entrepreneur and you're trying to figure that out, it might take you a few test cases to figure out what types of clients are the easiest to work with and easiest to close and generate the most revenue. Because you could potentially close like a huge contract with a big company, but it could take you like 6 months. They could be a pain in the butt to work with. And then the product's just not like the perfect fit, but it works. So you want to figure out where that low-hanging valuable fruit is. Number two is they don't create a process. Mm-hmm. And so as a result, they kind of wing it. So like creating a process, makes it easier for everybody and then makes that scalable. So as an entrepreneur, once you have got some momentum going to where the point you can hire a salesperson to do most of the selling for you, like if you don't have a process that you've created that works, then that salesperson is going to have to figure out their own process and create one. And that could take, 3 to 6 months, depending on the salesperson. But if you already have a process, they can hit the ball rolling and take their skills and make that process even better.
Yeah. I think that's the biggest thing that you taught me in some of our coaching is like, I've definitely over the years learned the skills of selling and everything, but I never really thought through it enough to break it down into a process. And this, in the past year here, I've been working on trying to scale the sales team, because that's the one area of my companies that I've just always struggled with. And I realized after working with you that I'd never had just a simple, clear process, like a checklist of steps to go through. I didn't have a simple, script. Obviously, we don't read the script word for word, but we go through step by step of covering all the questions. And as soon as I, implemented that and actually trained a couple of my sales, junior salespeople that I had brought in, they started closing stuff on by themselves, and it was just like a huge win and a huge feeling of success, because I've always struggled with replicating, my sales ability, and it's just like you said, having a simple process really, cuts out half the work. If somebody can follow the steps, and do what you tell them to do and follow a process, then it's way easier. So I think that's an underrated, hugely valuable, tip that everybody should look at is, break it down into a process, because it'll make you more disciplined as a salesperson, and it's much easier to replicate yourself, like you said.
Yeah, it's kind of like cooking. If I ask you to cook me, steak and potatoes au gratin and a kale salad, you could do it, but it's going to taste a lot better if you have the recipe.
Yep.
that's what a lot of companies lack, is that sales recipe. And once the salesperson gets comfortable with it, then they can modify it and improve it and tweak it that to where it's comfortable for them. And then other companies I've started at where I've been really successful, they had a process that I could learn really quickly and adopt to make my own. Whereas other places I've worked where they didn't have a process, I had to figure it out on my own, and that made the success curve a bit longer.
Yeah, definitely. So I mean, there's obviously a lot of different stages kind of in sales and in developing a company, and obviously from starting your own thing to kind of landing a new sales position. But do you feel like there's one thing that if everybody did, no matter what stage they were at on a daily basis, that it would improve their sales process and their sales program? Is there just kind of like one core thing that you're always like, if we do this, we can start seeing results?
Yeah, it's have some sort of learning or reading practice in place every day. So whether it's reading a book about sales, marketing, or your industry, or listening to a podcast, or even taking a course. I probably consume, on a good day, 2 to 3 hours worth of marketing and sales related content. And, I'm pretty good at it, but there's always more to learn. And as you continue to learn these things and you consume that data, it also reminds you of the basics. Because I'm not perfect. I'll be on phone calls and I'll forget to do test closes or ask specific types of questions. And that's part of the problem with being experienced, is sometimes you go back to relying on your experience.
Yeah.
Instead of following your process. But learning every day is something that beyond sales is going to help you be successful.
Definitely. That's a good point. Are there any, I know you have a couple courses that, and things we can point people to. And then are there any other books or resources or people that you follow that have been helpful in that area?
Yeah. So some of my favorite podcasts are the Zig Ziglar True Performance podcast. Zig Ziglar was a master sales trainer and motivational speaker who died a few years ago. And so they just relaunched his podcast where they go through his old speeches and interview people. It's more inspirational than practical tips. And then I listen to Marketing in Your Car, which is Russell Brunson's, the founder of ClickFunnels podcast, where he gives quick little actionable tips. And even though he doesn't, excuse me, I don't think he realizes that he's also giving a lot of sales advice, because a lot of his software, focuses on selling, and some of those skills transfer over.
Awesome. Those are great. Another thing you kind of alluded to, like in following a process or doing your test closes, another thing that you pointed out to me when you were doing some coaching with me on our process was something I never really thought about, and I just kind of assumed, which led me to some bad deals, like you mentioned. And honestly, those are the worst ones once you realized, a week or, a month into it, that you sold the wrong person. Is that you mentioned, like in our case with one of our products, Copywriter Today, you said, ask the person, have you ever used a service like this before, and how did it work out? And to kind of hear, get their feedback and see if they'd ever done anything like that. And then also that led us into kind of the question or the suggestion of like, hey, to make our program successful, although we don't require a contract for our basic accounts, we typically see that people should invest at least 3 or 4 months to make it successful and get our team synced up and working with you, with the client's team. And just by you pointing that out, I realized that I could obviously get a gauge for kind of where they were at with that. But if I listened, I could get a sense for, had they done this before? Was it a disaster? I realize in other areas, because I'm always listening to what they're saying, that people that you're talking to will give you clues about what they want or what they need or what had happened before. But that's one area that I had never explored. And so we'd sign people up and it wasn't a good fit, and they'd be, gone in a month or two, and all that wasted effort and sales commission and all the other stuff that goes into onboarding a customer, was just lost. So I thought that was just a really interesting, and just clear, simple, question that you could ask in, and I think it would apply in a lot of different products or services. Like, have you ever done this before? And how did that work out? What was the good or bad of it? You get a sense for like how picky people are, or if they know how to partner with outside, firms or whatever the case was. And so that was just a good example of like following a process of questions and learning about the client and not just rushing straight to closing or trying to close.
Yeah. I mean, and that's what, and I'm putting together a sales training course to help entrepreneurs, learn how to sell and create scalable sales systems for themselves. And one of those, one of those steps is creating an after sales success plan. Like, we would have the same issue with our customers at work. And I realized that I wasn't defining what success was looking like for the customer, and making sure that we're all in agreement of what success is going to look like and what it's going to take to get there. And once I started doing that, my customer churn dropped dramatically. So where customers would stay for 2 to 3 months, then now they started staying for 6 to 8 months, because I was able to manage that expectation of how long it would take to dial in the results.
Yeah.
Now, depending on the product or service you're selling, that might be different, but you want to have a plan to keep your customers happy and working with you, because it's always easier to get additional money out of somebody who's already purchased from you than to go find a new customer.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, there's always, like, if I've ever been looking for, like you said earlier on, like when I'm looking for an easy win or to move the needle without incredible effort, it's always good to go back to existing customers, that are still with you, and ones that were before that, were still happy, but just like wrapped up for other reasons or something, and go back and sell to them. That's definitely the fastest way to cash.
Even customers that weren't happy with you, I mean, if they bought from you once, they can buy from you again, especially if you fixed whatever that issue was.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. What do you think? Obviously you went from, selling stuff as for Boy Scouts door to door to where you're at now, where you're doing really large sales. Is there a big mindset shift that has to occur for somebody to go from selling, a few $100 or a very low cost product to $100,000 or $1 million sale? What's the difference there? What has to happen?
I think that depends on who you ask. Some people say yes. It is very different. I think a lot of it you just have to get comfortable with the bigger numbers. So what I noticed within my role at first, when I started off, I would ask the customers to start off with a very small purchase, because I wasn't comfortable asking for more, because I was afraid of hearing no. Mm-hmm. But as I got more comfortable, I started just asking for bigger and bigger numbers up front, just to see, what's going to happen. Because I realized that you can always negotiate down, but it's harder to negotiate up. So once I started doing that, then my average deal sizes started increasing. Yeah. So it's really just get a level of comfortability and realizing that. Now, it also depends on the environment you're selling in. There's a great book called Pitch Anything by Oren Clough, I believe his name is.
Okay.
But that's a very high pressure negotiation sales tactic book that is not applicable for most sales type of selling. That's more when it's an adversarial type of thing, when you're negotiating some sort of merger or something where the deal has to go through, but
yeah,
the terms are still up for grabs.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think that's probably true. I think in some sense it's almost just like it's confidence, but it's also just going for it. Because I actually just finished up a book called Profit First, which is is great for entrepreneurs starting out, to make sure that you really price correctly and are building in profit and not just leaving yourself the scraps at the end of the deal as a business or as the owner. And I had a similar system in place, but didn't really have a couple, components I didn't really think through, long-term from a financial standpoint. So after reading the book, I created a new, pricing calculator that I've had some semblances of before, but this one will actually, work for any product, which is nice. So as an example, I got on the phone today to somebody, and normally something I would have charged $350 for. ended up with my calculator, ended up almost doubling for a couple reasons and kind of factors. And so it ended up being like a $700 price point. And I'm like, well, I'm committed to being more profitable. So I just rolled with the price and, just kind of shot it out there. And they're like, all right, that sounds great. And I think as salespeople, whatever we have going on, sometimes we project our situation or our thought process about money or our frugality or whatever, anything else we have going on, we project that on our customers and like pre-decide for them. And then we end up being nervous about pitching whatever the real number should be. And, when you
then you're already coming up with reasons for them not to buy.
Right.
You should let the customer do that work for you.
Exactly. So it's just like interesting because I'm like, and it's taken me a while to learn this. I mean, finance was not my strong area years ago when I started out in business, but at this point I've had some good teachers and learned some good lessons. But now I'm comfortable just going, hey, this is the price. This is how I can do it profitably. And there's some marginal wiggle room if that's going to, if a few percentage points really like 5% or less is going to make a difference, then I'm open to that. But beyond that, if it makes them feel good, I can give them a little concession. But beyond that, it's like, this is the price and I'm confident that we can deliver. And I think that's definitely part of what you got to get to when you're, quoting higher than you're used to, whatever that number is, hundreds of dollars or hundreds of thousands. Because I've done the same thing with, big projects that are $80,000, $90,000. You're just like, oh, this is what it costs. They can either afford it or they can't. And I don't have to decide that for them.
Yeah, well, if you're running into the situation where a customer's balking at the price, then a couple of things have potentially happened. One, you either sourced the lead incorrectly and they're not a good fit. But if you're sure that they're a good fit, then you did not establish, value for that price. And so then you need to go through and reestablish that value and use your test closes. So, for example, if somebody wanted some coaching from me, and my coaching costs, $15,000. So instead of being like, hey, Gabe, yeah, my coaching's $15,000. I'm going to help you improve your sales process. That's going to be a bit of a sticker shock for you, right?
Yeah.
But if I'm like, okay, Gabe, so how many sales are you getting per month?
Say 20, whatever the number is.
And do you know what your average close rate is?
We'll say 15%. It depends what products 15%. We're talking about.
Okay, that's pretty low. Sorry, my Amazon Echo just went off.
No problem.
All right, so it sounds like you're leaving a lot of your money on the table by not closing all these leads. And do you know what your average deal size is?
Let's say $1,000.
$1,000. And how many leads a month are you bringing in?
Well, at that rate, we're getting 90 to 100.
Okay, let me do some basic math here and let's see if these numbers make sense. So you're bringing in 100 leads, and you're closing 15%.
Yep.
So right now you're bringing in about $15,000 a month, if that math makes sense. Does that math make sense to you?
Yep.
Okay. So if I can come in and bring that close rate to 30% time, let's do some math. So that's, I did that wrong, I'm sorry. 0.3. So now instead of closing 15 to 20, you're closing 30 or more deals per month at 1,000.
Then I pay for you in the first month.
Yeah, then you paid for me in the first month. And that's just assuming I've doubled your close rate, which is something that's pretty easy to do, takes a 15 to 30% close rate. But if I also increase your average deal size by 20 to 30%, my coaching pays for itself, 12 times over.
Yeah.
So now does that seem like $15,000 for a $150,000 return seem like a good investment for you?
Absolutely.
So that's how you do it. And I use those test close to get you to agree with me along the way. So then when I say, okay, let's sign the contract, it's going to be more difficult for you to say no cognitively. That's just some psychology. And I've also just shown that like my program's going to pay for itself. And then if you still had like some concerns, you're like, oh man, 15,000 is a lot. And I'll be like, well, let's do it. And like, if in 3 months I'm not delivering, you fire me.
Yep.
But that's how you do it. So if a customer's balking at it and they're either not a good fit, or you haven't established the value of your services.
No, that's
a good rule of thumb that a lot of internet marketers use, and I think they overly abuse this, is what you're charging should be worth 10x the value. So if I'm charging $15,000, I should be getting my customers at least $150,000 in net revenue.
Mm-hmm. No, that's a perfect example of how you walk through things, and we did a very similar thing for the resume service the other day, which was great because, like you said, I think if I remember right, I forget, it might even be from the book that you were reading that I had read before, Influence, but a book I've read that the test closes or the micro closes or whatever you call them, basically psychology is that if you say yes to me repeatedly through the conversation, then you've built in this rule of consistency is what it's called. And so as society, as people, as like the way we're wired, we're taught and feel and kind of innately don't want to break consistency. And so I've been saying yes to you so far and agreeing, and so just like you said, it's much harder to say no, especially when the logic's there that it's a good investment and you've built the value and everything. So that's definitely something that I've always worked to build into our processes and our scripts and everything, is getting people's agreement early on. Because like you said, if they can't agree with you in the beginning, then it's definitely not a good fit, if they don't see the value there. But it also just kind of, reinforces the whole conversation that leads down to the close.
Yeah.
So. Awesome. Yeah, that's an excellent live example. I like how you can do that. I can always like throw something your way, and you don't have to know the product or anything, and you can usually, in a matter of moments, come up with a good close from a structure standpoint at least. So that's good.
Yeah. Well, it's something I like doing because when you sell the same thing over and over again, it becomes very easy to just fall into a routine. So I find myself doing this often at work. So I need to find ways of challenging myself to stay sharp.
Awesome. Well, this has been really valuable. I appreciate the time and the insight, and I'm sure everybody listening to will get some value from it. If people do want to learn more about your courses or work with you, or what's the best way that people can connect with you?
Yeah, so there's a couple of ways you can reach out to me on my website, jeremiahboehner.com, Boehner. And I offer a free 30-minute sales consulting or business consulting call. Just go to my site, jeremiahboehner.com/sales consulting. There's a dash in between sales and consulting. And we'll set up a time to talk, and I'll walk you through whatever your issues are and see if it makes sense for us to work further. And you can follow me on Twitter and keep an eye out for my upcoming book and sales course.
Awesome. Fantastic. Well, I'll put that in the show notes and get that out to everybody. So thank you so much. I appreciate your time, and I'm sure I'll have you back again soon.
Cool. Thank you.
All right. Well, that was fantastic. I hope you guys found value in it and enjoyed it. I'm definitely, if you enjoyed this, if it was helpful, if you learned something, let me know. Definitely reach out, comment, and leave your feedback, because I'd love to have Jeremiah back on again. And he'll also be coming out with his book, as he mentioned, so we'll probably have him back on to talk more about that. But if you did enjoy this, I'd love it. I'd really appreciate it if you would give us a great rating on iTunes and let us know what you like. And you can always reach out and share your feedback or comments, or if you need any help with anything, just go over to startsuccessfully.com and hit me up there, and I'll be happy to help you out with whatever I can. And we'll see you on the next episode. Thanks, guys. you looking to get started successfully? Today, I want to invite you to join the Start Successfully Mastermind group. You can check it out by going to startsuccessfully.com/mastermind. There, I'll share all the details with you, and you can give it a try for just $1 for the first week. Inside the group, I'll share with you all the templates, all the details and strategies and everything that I'm doing to build out the new businesses that I'm working on, and you'll also get insider strategies and tips from our guests. So go ahead and check it out, startsuccessfully.com/mastermind, and we'll see you on the inside.
Thanks for listening to the Start Successfully podcast. To connect with Gabe Arnold or with our guests and resources from today's show, please visit startsuccessfully.com.